I had a climbing rose on my back fence that bloomed exactly once every summer for 6 years, beautiful in late June, then nothing but yellowing leaves and black spot through July and August until the first frost put us both out of our misery. Every year I told myself it was the variety, or the soil, or that roses were just difficult. What it actually was, every single time, was August. I was letting August happen to that rose instead of doing something about it. The year I finally got these 5 tasks right, that same rose bloomed again in September, and the autumn flowers were deeper in color and richer in scent than anything it had put out in June. Stay especially for task 5, because the feeding mistake most gardeners make in August is the exact reason their roses look exhausted by September when they should be at their most beautiful. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. I post every single week with real practical gardening advice from someone who has killed more than her fair share of plants and learned every lesson the hard way. Hit subscribe so you never miss a video, and drop your U.S. state and hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one. Before we get into it, if you want even more help growing healthier plants, getting bigger blooms, and avoiding the costly mistakes most gardeners make, I have put together my complete Gardening Grandma course, and the link is waiting for you right at the top of the description below. Now, let us get into it. Here is the thing most rose advice skips over because it sounds like a biology lesson, but stay with me for 1 minute, because once you understand it, every task on this list makes instant sense. In August, a rose is running 2 programs at once, and they compete directly with each other. Program 1 is seed production. Every faded flower left on the plant sends a signal down the stem that says the job is done, start building a hip. The plant pours its stored energy into producing seed, which is metabolically expensive. Program 2 is winter preparation. Shortening days and cooling nights are beginning to tell the plant to slow new growth, thicken the cell walls in this year's canes, and move carbohydrates down into the root crown where they will sit as reserves all winter. Your job in August is to support Program 2 while making deliberate choices about how much of Program 1 you allow. Everything on this list flows from that. Task 1, water deeply and water like you mean it. The most common watering mistake with roses is choosing frequency over volume. A daily 5-minute pass with the hose wets the top 2 inches of soil and nothing below it. The plant responds by growing its feeder roots up toward that shallow, reliable moisture, which gives you a fragile root system that panics the moment you miss a day. What you want instead is deep, infrequent soaking. For an established shrub rose in the ground, aim for 4 to 5 gallons delivered slowly, once a week in normal conditions and twice in a genuine heat wave. Slowly is the key word. Set the hose at a trickle at the base of the plant and let it run for 15 to 20 minutes, or lay a soaker hose in a loop around the drip line and leave it for half an hour. The goal is moisture reaching 12 to 18 inches down. You can test this. Push a long screwdriver into the soil, about a foot out from the crown, an hour after watering. It will slide through moist soil and stop where the soil is still dry. If it is only going in 4 inches, you are watering too briefly, not too often. Container roses are a different situation entirely. A pot has no groundwater to draw from, and the sides heat up in direct sun. In real August heat, a rose in a medium-sized pot may need water every single day. The rule is simple. Water until it runs freely from the drainage holes. Wait a moment, then do it once more. That second pass matters because the first often just runs down the gap between the root ball and the pot wall. And always direct the water at the soil around the base, never over the foliage. Wet leaves in August dew conditions are the single biggest invitation to black spot, which brings us to Task 3. Task 2, Deadhead with Intention and decide about hips. Removing faded flowers interrupts the seed production signal before it gains momentum and redirects that energy directly into new shoots and new buds. On a repeat flowering rose, consistent deadheading in August is the difference between two more full flushes through September and one thin, half-hearted effort. The technique has evolved from what many of us were taught. The old advice was to cut back to the first outward-facing 5-leaflet leaf. That still works and is a good default for hybrid teas. But on shrub roses and floribundas, cutting just above the first healthy leaf below the spent bloom, even if that leaf has only 3 leaflets, produces a faster response and more flowers. Less wood removed means less recovery time before the next bud breaks. Make the cut at a slight angle, about 1/4 of an inch above the leaf, so water runs off rather than pooling on the growing point. Leave no stub above the bud. It will die back and give fungus a foothold. For floribundas and cluster roses, individual flowers within a truss open and fade at different times over a week or two. Snap out the individual spent blooms as they go. Then, once the whole truss is finished, cut the entire stem back to the first good leaf below it. Now the decision that deserves actual thought. Every faded bloom you leave in place from mid-August onward can become a rose hip. Species roses and many old garden roses produce magnificent hips, fat scarlet ones, elongated vermilion ones, clusters against silver-gray foliage, and they are real winter food for birds and real autumn beauty for you. Here is how I frame the choice. If your rose is a repeat bloomer, deadhead everything through August and into early September. If it is a once-flowering rambler or species rose that finished in June, the hip decision was made weeks ago. And if yours is a repeat bloomer that also sets good hips, as many rugosas do, split the difference, deadhead diligently, until roughly the 3rd week of August. Then let the final flush stand and become hips. You get the flowers and the winter display both. Before Task 3, drop your U.S. state and hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one, and Task 5 in particular gives you very different advice depending on your zone and when your first frost typically arrives. How many of these first 2 tasks are you already doing? And be honest with me. Drop your number. If you are not subscribed yet, please do that right now. Every week I put out practical information built for gardeners who want the real story. Hit subscribe and let us keep going. Task 3, open up the plant and get ahead of disease. Late summer is peak season for fungal disease on roses, and the reason is almost embarrassingly simple. Warm days, cooling nights, and heavy dew mean leaves stay wet for 6 or 7 hours every morning. Black spot spores need about 7 continuous hours of leaf wetness to germinate and infect. Cut the hours of leaf wetness and you cut the disease. Airflow is how you do it. Since we are not doing structural pruning in August, that waits for late winter, you improve airflow in 4 practical ways. First, pull weeds from around the base of the plant by hand, not with a hoe that would damage the shallow feeder roots. Weeds create a humid pocket right where the lowest leaves are, and lower leaves are always where black spot appears first. Second, cut back whatever is crowding in from the sides. Catmint, hardy geraniums, and salvia all sprawl by August and lean into the skirt of the rose. Shear them back. Most will reflower in September, and you have opened a corridor of moving air at soil level. Third, remove dying or congested foliage from inside the plant by hand. You are not shaping it, just removing leaves that are finished anyway and blocking air movement through the center. Fourth, and this is the one most people skip, rake up every fallen leaf beneath the plant every single week. Black spot overwinters on fallen leaves and reinfects the plant next spring. Never compost this material, bag it and bin it. While you are clearing the ground and looking through the foliage, you are also inspecting, which is the real point. Black spot looks like dark fringed blotches on the upper leaf surface, often with a yellow halo, and the leaf goes yellow and drops. Powdery mildew looks like someone dusted the plant with talc and favors new growth and bud tips, and a rose being troubled by spider mites takes on a fine bronzed, stippled appearance. Turn a leaf over, and you may see fine webbing in the joints. Mites thrive in hot, dry, dusty conditions, and a forceful jet of water aimed at the undersides of the leaves, repeated every 3 days for 2 weeks, breaks their cycle without any chemistry at all. Keep the ground clean, keep the air moving, and you will rarely need to reach for a spray bottle. Task 4. Container roses. Get them out of the worst of the heat. Roses have a temperature ceiling for bud production. When the root zone temperature climbs past roughly 90 degrees for sustained periods, the plant stops setting new buds entirely. It will hold its leaves and keep the roots alive, but it will not flower. A rose in the ground has thousands of pounds of earth acting as a thermal buffer. A rose in a medium pot has a fraction of that, wrapped in a container absorbing direct afternoon sun on all sides. You can water that plant perfectly and still get nothing from it all month. The fix is to change its address for a few weeks. Move containers to a position that still gets morning sun, 4 to 6 hours of it, but falls into shade from roughly noon through mid-afternoon. Morning light drives photosynthesis efficiently while temperatures are still reasonable. An east-facing wall or a spot under the high canopy of a deciduous tree is close to perfect. If the pot is too large to move, bring the shade to it instead. A shade cloth at 30 to 40% stretched on a simple frame, or a plant umbrella staked beside the container will protect the root zone through the worst hours. One detail most people miss: shade the pot, not just the foliage. It is the soil temperature suppressing the flowers, not the light hitting the leaves. Grouping pots together helps considerably. Clustered containers shade each other's sides, and the combined transpiration from all that foliage creates a noticeably cooler pocket of air. Put the largest, leafiest plants on the sunny side of the group and tuck the roses behind them. Once night temperatures begin easing in late September, move everything back into full sun, and the plant will reward you promptly. Task 5. Feed the repeat bloomers and know exactly when to stop. Feeding a rose in August is either the best thing you will do all month or a mistake that costs you next spring. 2 questions determine which. First, is it still producing new flowers? If yes, it is a repeat bloomer actively spending energy worth replacing. Feed it. If it finished in June and has produced nothing since, it has switched into storage mode, and feeding now works directly against it. Second, turn the bottle around and look at the 3 numbers on the label: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, in that order. In August, you want the 3rd number, potassium, to be the highest. Potassium supports flower development and helps the plant harden its cell walls going into winter. What you must avoid is a high first number, nitrogen, which drives soft leafy growth. That is exactly what you want in April. In August, it produces tender shoots that cannot harden before frost, and that attract powdery mildew and aphids during the very weeks you are trying to keep the plant clean. A general tomato feed is often a better August choice for roses than a spring rose fertilizer because tomato feeds are built around high potassium. Apply it as a liquid to moist soil, never dry, and apply it around the drip line rather than against the main stem, because that is where the feeder roots are actually concentrated. And now the most important sentence in this whole task. The last feed of the year should go on roughly 6 to 8 weeks before your average first frost date. In zones 4 and 5, where frost commonly arrives in late September, you may already be at that cutoff. Zone 6, mid-August. Zone 7, late August. Zones 8 and 9, you can feed into September. Feed past that window, and you override the plant's own signaling. It will keep pushing growth when it should be moving reserves into the roots, and it will be caught by the first cold snap. A dilute seaweed or kelp tonic, applied every 2 to 3 weeks through late summer, is a safe choice for any rose, regardless of whether it is still blooming. It is a biostimulant that improves root development and cold hardiness without triggering any soft-top growth, and it is one of the most useful things you can give a rose heading into autumn. Drop your zone in the comments and tell me, which one of these 5 tasks have you been skipping without realizing it? And do you have a rose that surprised you with what it produced in September or October once you changed how you cared for it in August? I want to hear about it. Share this video with one gardener in your life who has roses and has been walking past them in August not knowing what to do. They deserve to know. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. I post every single week and I never waste your time. Until next time, happy gardening. Take care of yourselves and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.